Welcome back. It's me, Sarah Vine, and Andrew Pearce, who has nervously eaten an awful lot of rich tea biscuits, presumably because you didn't get much sleep last night. Is
Not
that
much.
correct? No. Tell us.
Couple of hours.
Couple of hours, yeah.
And actually, what I do, I go to bed pretty straight after the exit poll because there's just a lot of waffle on whatever TV or radio station you're listening to or looking at. So I then got up in the early hours when it was getting interesting. And it was pretty much in line with what we thought. It was going to be a Labour landslide, and indeed it was. And in fact, it is the worst Tory defeat in modern history. And not surprising, considering the campaign was awful.
It was awful.
And it was too early.
And it was too early, and it was messy and scrappy, and Rishi Sunak did a lot of silly things, including not turning up for the D-Day celebrations.
Leaving
early. He did turn up, sorry.
But he left early.
Yeah, leaving early.
Which was disrespectful.
There were little moments which I think made all the difference. But I honestly think that even before that, I think the die was cast, don't you?
I do. I think the party, Tories have been in power for 14 years. They were in their fifth Prime Minister since 2016. It's taking the mick out of the electorate, frankly. And nobody was listening. And they weren't listening because the Tories didn't have a positive narrative to give to the country. What was the theme of the campaign?
Or a coherent narrative. I think
Exactly.
it was just all very, very scrappy. But it is interesting because Labour have got a massive majority, but it is, I think, quite interestingly, based on quite shaky ground.
Really shaky.
Because the turnout is very low.
60%, the second lowest since 1885.
Yeah.
This previous lowest turnout was 2001 when it was 59%. And that again was because people knew that there was going to be a second Blair landslide. So people just couldn't be bothered.
Well, I mean, I think also, I remember back then the country was going very well. Nobody needed an election.
Yeah.
And everyone just liked Blair was doing really well. Everything seemed to be, it was cool Britannia.
It was all of that. And the Tories are being led by William Hague,
exactly.
who was
there was no point.
The wrong leader at the wrong time. Didn't look the part, didn't sound the part, and actually Blair just patronised him, and so there was people just didn't bother. But this election, the real question, Sarah, I'm writing about this in the Mail, is the extraordinary decision of the Prime Minister to go in July. He didn't need to. He could have waited till October or November, which would have guaranteed Nigel Farage would have been in the United States side by side with his buddy Donald Trump. Did you notice, by the way, Farage in his acceptance speech talked about folks? That's what Donald Trump refers to,
yes.
Folks. We don't use that word here very much. But that would have got Trump out the way, and the Reform bandwagon would never have started because Richard Tice, who was leading Reform, has the charisma of a gnat.
Yes, I agree. But I think the thing is, he did what he did, so it is what it is. We have to accept that was the decision that he made. And I mean, also you could argue that interest rates came down. I think it was yesterday they came down. Actually, on Thursday.
No, they didn't. But they will come down at the next meeting.
They will come down, won't they?
And Labour will get the benefit.
Yes,
because the Bank of England had a chance to cut them during the election campaign, but apparently they thought, no, we can't cut election interest rates during an election campaign. People will think we're biased. No, the Bank of England should cut interest rates when it's right to cut them, which, by the way, was months ago.
Yes, I mean, but inflation has come down.
Inflation came down to 2%.
It was a miscalculation. But the thing is, I mean, all of that, but I still think that even if they had waited,
they were going to lose.
They were still going to lose. And the other thing to say is that, this Labour majority is based on 34% of the vote share. Which is lower than ever. It's never been lower.
It's never been lower for a government to be elected with a majority, not even a landslide, any majority to be only on 34% vote share. And when you take into account the turnout, Sarah, it means 80% of the country did not vote for this government, which has a landslide victory, which is why you called it a loveless landslide.
Exactly.
And it is.
And also when you think back to Brexit and the fact that the Remainers made such a gigantic fuss about the fact that the difference between Remain and Leave was 48-52, and that wasn't enough of a... I mean, you're talking about a government that has got a massive mandate, and it's basically 20% of the electorate that have voted for it, and the rest 80% are completely disenfranchised.
Which is why I think it could rapidly be... Look, we wish it well, this government. We want it to do well. I think Keir Starmer's probably a decent bloke. I don't know him at all. I've met him a few times, but we want it to do well.
I went to bed at about 2, and the few Labour candidates that I saw
seemed
perfectly good eggs to me. I have to say, I didn't get a sense that they were mad.
It's not the Marxist Corbyn.
No,
it's not weird Ed Miliband with his peculiar bacon sandwich eating habits and his obsession with screwing us with green taxes and our electric bills and our gas bills.
No, some of them most of them seemed genuinely quite sincere people, but then, as we know, all politicians start out as genuinely quite sincere people. But I think that's what's interesting about that. And then I think the other thing to say is that, and this paper called this, and actually we called it, and we've been saying it for months, that people who voted for reform, who presumably, if they voted reform, wanted a sort of centre-right politician, have actually got a socialist government because of the way the votes have played out. And again, when I was watching last night, a lot of the reform candidates were coming second.
Yeah.
And so if you add up the reform votes and the conservative votes, a lot of those seats would have probably stayed
the Tories were on around 22% vote share, Reform on 15%, that's 37%, Labour on 34%.
So, exactly.
It would have best been a hung parliament.
Yeah.
And interestingly, in the seats, which I'm just looking at these figures, where more than 60% of the constituency voted Leave, the Tory vote fell by nearly 30% because people felt let down by Brexit. They don't feel Brexit was delivered, and they voted for Farage's party.
Yes, so immigration, although it wasn't a sort of headline issue in this
bubbling under the surface,
it's bubbling under the surface, and interestingly, so the Tories have suffered because there's been a pincer movement from the Lib Dems who have taken a lot of blue wall seats, including my ex-husband Michael Gove's Surrey Heath seat, which was a properly safe seat back in the day. So that's what's happened. So basically, left-leaning Tories have voted Lib Dem, right-leaning Tories have voted Reform, and that has created a huge schism that has basically defenestrated the Conservatives, and they're sort of stuck in the middle with the rump of the vote.
Yeah, interesting. There were one or two. Labour didn't have it all their own way, of course, as you know. So I wrote extensively in this paper about the rise of the independent Muslim candidate and how that could pose a threat to Labour MPs. So the ubiquitous Wes Streeting, the Shadow Health Secretary, well, he's now the Health Secretary, who was never off our television screens during the election. He scraped home by just 500 votes in his constituency, where he was chased to the line by an independent Muslim candidate. But John Ashworth, who was also never off our television screens for the Labour Party, he was the shadow minister without portfolio, would have had a big job in the cabinet, lost his seat in Leicester. Again, it was independent Muslims. And this is going to be a continuing problem for Labour, because the Gaza situation isn't going to be solved by the election of Keir Starmer and potentially David Lammy if he is Foreign Secretary. And Jeremy Corbyn, of course, won in Ilford North.
He did.
Who would have thought that?
And did Galloway lose his seat?
Galloway lost his seat, yeah. But
that's one good thing. I mean, the thing is, I think a lot of conversations now will turn to the question of PR versus first past the post because of the way this election has played out. I honestly, genuinely think that a lot of ordinary people don't really understand how the electoral system really works. Genuinely, I don't think they understand how first past the post works. No. And I think that they think if they vote Reform, they get Reform, but they don't. They don't necessarily get it. But the good thing about the first past the post system is it does keep, for want of a better word, slightly mad people out.
Yes, it does.
It keeps them on the margins.
Yeah. Well, look at
because if you look what's happening in Europe and the rise of the far right, that's possible because most of those countries have PR.
They do. But the idea that Labour are even going to countenance a discussion. No. I'm pointing out in my column, the new business secretary, John E. Reynolds, was a passionate champion of proportional representation in 2015 and 2017. He's not anymore. Now Labour have won with a majority of 170. Yes, so that's all gone.
That's all in the long grass. What about the Lib Dems? I mean,
well, they did very well.
It's very interesting that the leader of the Lib Dems, basically his whole campaign was just turning up and making a fool of himself, and that seems to have really rung people's bells.
It got him on the television every night or most nights, and people thought, oh, he's one of us and funny. He often took a chance when he could to talk about the difficulties he and his wife have had bringing up their very severely disabled child and linking it to the problem with social services and social care. But it also, Sarah, of course, distracted from his shameful role in the great post office Horizon IT scandal, because he was the post office minister who famously told Mr. Bates he was too busy to see him. Mr. Bates, who starred in the TV drama.
I know, and has now
got
been
a
given a knighthood. I mean,
so
I think
nobody talked about the post office, and they should have.
Absolutely. And they've got what? How many seats? 60?
No, over 70.
Over 70.
That's
the largest
record.
they've ever had.
But they got that on 3.5 million votes. Nigel Farage, his Reform Party, just over 4 million votes, 4 seats, maybe 5, because there's a recount happening later. So you will hear the cry from Nigel Farage.
They'll want, yeah.
But it's
because
not
the Lib Dems were always the kind of champions
they
of proportional representation, weren't they?
Yes, but they won't be
crying. So they'll be
they
fine
won't be
now.
saying too much now because they've got their highest ever number.
Exactly.
And I did ask Daisy Cooper, the deputy leader of the Liberal Democrats, I said, so you're presumably going to be protesting in the strongest possible terms that Reform got had fewer votes than you, but have got 66 fewer MPs, Daisy Cooper. Will you be raising that in the Commons because of the iniquities of the electoral system? She changed the subject.
Yeah.
Of course she did.
It's funny, isn't it?
But Starmer, he's got a huge majority. He's got a mandate for 4 or 5 years, maybe 10 years, because the Tories are in the wilderness. But I have to say, that speech on the steps of Downing Street, my God, he's not Blair, is he?
No, he's really not.
Oh, my God.
Can I say something a bit controversial?
Please, you always do.
I'm quite glad that the Tories are now in the wilderness.
They deserve to be.
I sort of think, A, they deserve to be, but I think it'll be good for them as well. And also, I'm quite relieved that it's going to be somebody else's fault for a bit.
Yes.
Because it's not going to be easy, because it isn't easy. It's not like it's not that it's not easy for Labour because they're Labour, or it's just not easy running the country. It's a really difficult thing to do.
As they're about to discover.
And I quite like the idea that I go to see.
Bless you.
Oh. I quite like the idea that it's just, that people can't just point and go evil Tories anymore.
Yeah.
It's nice.
On Monday, when the boats start crossing the channel, that's Labour's problem. But don't worry, they're going to smash the gang, Sarah.
And when there's going to be more massive kind of pro-Palestinian demonstrations and more anti-Semitic stuff, and all this stuff all these completely impossible problems that can't be solved because they're just too difficult to solve, are no longer going to belong to the Conservatives. And I think that's good. And I just moving on to the Conservatives, what do you think they'll do? I think that, quite a lot of the big beasts have gone, and I'm not sorry, to be honest. I'm not sorry to see the back of Liz Truss, and I'm not sorry to see the back of Penny Mordaunt.
You're not devastated to see the loss of Mark Harper? Mark who? The Transport Secretary? Did he ever whinge about the fact the trains don't run on time? And did they ever use that law that was brought in to stop the train companies going on strike?
I'm sad about Robert Buckland, because he's a clever chap, really clever chap.
He was Justice Secretary one time, MP for my hometown of Swindon. He's gone. But also Grant Shapps has gone. Oh, no, how are we going to cope without Garance? Yeah. Who else lost? Penny Mordaunt, of course, was a serious contender to be Tory leader, and that would have been a disaster.
It would
more
have been.
Centrism, more pregnant people, as she likes to refer to it. Actually, I thought only women could have a baby. Call me old-fashioned. What do I know about it? So she's gone. Jeremy Hunt held on against all the odds. It would be a mistake to make him leader. So I have an idea, Sarah, that rather than rushing into a leadership contest, which seemed to be what Rishi Sunak was suggesting, I won't resign immediately as leader. I'll resign when rules are put in place to elect a successor. Why don't they 1922 committee, which is the backbench trade union committee, if you like, get agreement with the parliamentary party, which isn't very large anymore, so it's not so difficult to get an agreement, for a stopgap caretaker leader, an elder statesman. You could think of perhaps somebody like David Davis, who's held on in his Yorkshire seat. He's been an MP since 1987. He's been in the cabinet. He's been in opposition. He knows how Parliament works.
He's quite a wise head.
He's wise. Yeah. He's a proper Eurosceptic. He's a Brexiteer, but he's quite good on human rights stuff. So he'd be completely opposed to a ID card. What about putting him in for 18 months? I have actually had that conversation with him last week, and he said, it's the worst job in Parliament being leader of the opposition. I said, yeah, but if the party came to you and asked, you'd have to do it. Why not?
I think you're completely right. I think what they just need is a period of reflection.
Yes.
Just a period of reflection. I mean, they're not going to get any purchase politically against such a large mandate for at least 2 years. So they might as well use that time to reflect and strategise what they're going to do next. What they need is a sort of, a managing director.
Yeah, they
basically.
do. Yeah.
Someone who, they don't need a chief executive at this stage. They just need somebody who can, make sure everything works, all the people, that everyone turns up, that's all super duper.
Because nobody's going to be listening to the leader of the opposition anyway. We're only going to be listening to the new government. But he or she, this caretaker, can sort out the party, all the new people who are in there, and then perhaps have a leadership contest in 18 months' time.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
what I would do.
Yeah.
Look, in 1997, after the biggest defeat, Starmer was only a couple of seats behind Blair's majority. They went and picked William Hague, who was 36 and way out of his depth. And it was a disaster.
Yeah.
And then in 2001, it was Ian Duncan Smith. Another disaster.
I mean, this is the thing. I mean, people keep saying to me, Kemi Badenoch, Kemi Badenoch. I don't think she, personally, I mean, I like her a great deal, and I think she's got a very good, solid moral compass, and I think she's very intelligent and brilliant in many ways. But I'm not sure she's ready. And I think you're right about the kind of caretaker figure. I think, you just want to let, I think you just want to let, we want to see how the dust settles a little bit.
We really do,
and what happens.
And there's no money now because the donors have cleared off. So you want stability. You don't want a leader who, such as we got with Rishi became leader without. Liz Truss became leader without the majority support of
any
MPs,
scrutiny.
But she got the support of the voluntary party. They're also going to have that debate about, do they want members of the party to have the final say on the leader, or should it be down to MPs?
Someone like David Davis could build membership slowly but surely. I mean, that's what they need to do. They need to bring people back to the party.
Yeah.
Younger people, there are lots of people who will want to kind of get, as this Labour government unfolds and all the issues that they're going to face, and there'll be good days and bad days, but people will sort of re-engage a bit, and they'll want to pivot towards an opposition.
Yeah.
And you have to have somebody who can build that. And I just think rushing headlong into a kind of leadership contest and then having someone very high profile is probably a mistake.
And the first thing, of course, David Davis could do would be to sack David Cameron from the Foreign Secretary beef, because he would be automatically a shadow Foreign Secretary, because of course it was Cameron who beat David Davis for the leadership in 2005, and perhaps the whole history of the Tory party might have been different. But I think that's an option, and I think they should consider it rather than there'll be about 7 or 8 candidates, Sarah, and it would just be more of the same. We shouldn't forget Scotland.
Oh
that
yes,
was
quickly, Scotland. Disaster.
The Scottish National Party had 38 seats. They are down 38
Well, they're
seats.
being punished.
They are. For wee Nicola Sturgeon. Wee Jimmy Cranky, as I like to call her.
He was on the telly last night as though butter wouldn't melt.
Shameless.
Nothing has happened.
No, but nothing to do with me.
Nothing to see
the fact I've been interviewed by the police, and my husband, who's chief executive, has been interviewed by the police, and the fact nobody's quite explained why the SNP owned a camper van which appeared to be on Nicola Sturgeon's mother-in-law's drive. Her mother-in-law is 92, so probably doesn't go on many camper van holidays. So I think they paid a very, very heavy price for that. I also got into a fight, by the way, this week with Stephen Flynn. Now, he's the leader of the SNP at Westminster, because I heard him giving an interview when he was asked about who did he want England to win their Euros match against Switzerland on Saturday. He couldn't have been rude about England if he tried. Kept going on about Toblerone. He likes Toblerone, so he's going to support Switzerland. So I put out on social media, well done, dear. Your visceral loathing of England will cost you lots of votes of English people living north of the border, some of whom might have been tempted to vote for the SNP because they couldn't bring themselves to vote. He had a complete fit about me. This SNP newspaper fakes up a photograph of me with a tube of Toblerone and put me in yodeling, what do you call them, that stuff that yodelers wear?
Oh, Tyrolean outfit.
Yes, a Tyrolean outfit.
I mentioned you'd look quite nice in that,
I do think I look rather fetching,
I'm surprised
actually.
you don't have
yes,
one.
and I had a bell as well, and they just took the mick, but it was quite funny. But then I realised that my tweet on social media about his stupid comments about the football had been seen 1.9 million times.
That's power.
That's power.
That's power. That's soft power.
And Mr. Flynn, I think I was right, because if you're listening, and we know the SNP loved the reaction because they're great supporters of the Daily Mail, I think that would have cost him some votes. But the SNP decimated north of the border. So one good thing, Sarah, the union is stronger as a result of the
Welsh
election.
did quite well, though, didn't they?
Well, there's no Tories in Wales now.
No. None
Despite
whatsoever.
the fact they've run Wales into the ground through their devolved government.
That's interesting, that, isn't it? I don't know why people
The 20 mile an hour speed limit.
Yeah.
They somehow, I think the people that voted in Wales just divorced what the Welsh government has done. This was all about what was happening in Westminster.
I'd be interested to know what the turnout actually was in Wales.
Yeah,
I bet
I'm not
it was
sure.
really, really low.
Yeah.
I bet you it's lower than the national average.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's that. After the break, we're going to have questions from listeners, which is very exciting.
They've sent in so many.
I know. I love the questions from the listeners.
Quite a few of them wanted to know about the blouse you were wearing last week because it was so lovely.
Was it?
Yeah.
Someone else mentioned that to me.
Yeah, lovely.
What one? I can't remember.
I can't
what
remember.
It looked like.
No.
I just put whatever's clean on. So now we've also got lots of email questions. This one is from Charlie James. So Keir Starmer mentioned in his statement this morning that the rebuilding of the Labour Party over the past 4 years has been pivotal to the winning of the Labour majority this morning. Do you think the Conservatives will look to rebuild their party over the next 4 years with a different mantra, new outlook and strategy, such as capturing the hearts of our younger generation, instead of entrapping them into a start of civil service? Or do you think they are just going to wait in the wings for Labour to mess up and swoop back in? A very good question, Charlie. What do you think?
Well, I hope they don't do that, wait for Labour to mess up. I mean, I think Labour will mess up. I think as night follows day, that will happen. I think they have to use this time in opposition to publish documents, pamphlets, think about policy. Their only the only thing I can hear from the last 6 weeks of the campaign is Labour on tax, Labour on tax, Labour on tax. Wasn't there something about national service? You vaguely think, and then there was all the rows. But on policy, it was. What does the modern Tory party stand for? I do not know.
You're completely right, and I also I really like his point about young people because I think the Conservatives
they wouldn't even
have
contemplate
really abandoned the younger generation. They've just ignored them.
And the national service won't have done much to.
Well, I like the national service idea for very personal reasons.
Because you wanted to get your son in that signed up in the union.
Quite like my son to be honest.
The junior in the hairdressing salon I go to said to me a couple of weeks ago, he was nearly 18. He said, "Am I going to be forced to go in the army if the Conservatives win the election?" I said, "No."
No, it wouldn't have been that anyway.
I've had sleepless nights.
Oh no, that's awful.
But I mean, all young people. Yeah, but look, there was nothing.
But things like
there.
student debt.
Yes, it's huge.
I mean, Labour. Didn't they say they were going to?
They were going to scrap tuition fees, and then we
had
had another screeching U-turn from Keir Starmer. He changed his mind.
Yeah.
But no, I think there was nothing in the Tory manifesto for young people.
No, and I think a lot of young people voted very tactically. That's what I'm hearing from my kind of anecdotal young people, because my daughter said her For You TikTok page was absolutely full of tactical voting strategies.
And a lot of young people, I'm told, looked at the Reform UK literature and liked it.
And all my son's friends. The four of them that I spoke to, again, very anecdotal, but very mixed group. They were all voting Reform. They just loved Nigel. They thought he was great.
Talks direct.
They they thought he was a laugh. Liked him.
Yeah.
Another question from Michael: will the new government strengthen the British Armed Forces in terms of equipment and personnel?
Well, I think defence will not be a priority for a Labour government, I'm afraid. The Tories were going to make it an absolute commitment that they would spend 2.5% of gross domestic product on defence. Nigel Farage says he'd want to spend 3%, but of course his manifesto was a fantasy wish list. But Labour wouldn't even commit to 2.5%.
Who is going to be the Defence Secretary, do you know?
It will be John Healey.
And what's he like?
He's dull and dependable, but that's what you want in defence. I noticed, by the way, a former Defence Secretary, Liam Fox, lost his seat. Who'd have thought that?
Did Liam Fox lose his seat?
Liam Fox lost his seat as well. In the carnage, people are not even mentioning. I mean, how many times did he run for the leadership?
A lot.
I talked to him at a party just a few weeks ago, just before Rishi called the election, and I said, "Is your seat safe?" He said, "If my seat goes, we're in real trouble." Well, it's gone.
Where was his seat?
Down in the West Country, Somerset way.
Yes, it's gone to Lib Dems, presumably.
Sure, it has.
Yeah. But if you look at the map, that's what's happened. Northeast has gone to Labour, Southwest has gone to Lib Dems. They've just been squeezed out.
A former GP.
Yeah.
He could have been potentially an acting leader.
Yeah.
Caretaker leader.
That's all we've got time for.
Oh.
I know, it's tragic.
Well, just think, this time next week, the Labour government will have been in power.
And it will be a glorious new dawn.
Glorious new dawn.
A glorious new dawn. I think we should just say congratulations
I think
the
we
Labour
should.
Party
And I, for one, am wishing them well.
And I also thought Angela Rayner was remarkably... Someone had obviously told all the Labour candidates...
Yeah, don't sneer.
Don't be too excited.
Yeah, don't foam at the mouth.
Apart from Andy Burnham, who really didn't get that memo because
the mayor in Greater Manchester
so excited,
couldn't help himself, could he? And they also were told not to be triumphalist.
Yeah.
But it will last a few days, and then they won't be able to help themselves. We should also, of course, wish the England team all the very best.
Oh yeah, is there another football match?
Even if the SNP man in London, Stephen what's his face, doesn't care for England winning. Come on, England.
Come on, England.
I fear I'm not watching it again, but I will watch if we get to semi-finals.
Yeah.
And I will wear, as discussed,
Williams,
hopefully freshly laundered.
I will make sure it's
England
twice
shirt.
laundered for you, because you really don't want to be wearing a teenage boy's shirt.
It does have to have fabric softener.
Yeah, okay. All right, fine. I will specially organise that for you.
What number does it have on the back?
I don't know. He's got so many football shirts. You've no idea.
Why do you need more than one?
Because it's an obsession. Football is an obsession.
Right, okay.
He's got vintage ones. He's got new ones. He's got old ones. He's got all the ones he had when he was a baby. He's kept everything.
Is his team Chelsea?
Yeah.
Right. Do you know which my team is?
Swindon
Town Football Club, who are in the lower reaches of Division 2.
Brilliant, that's what you
Come on, the Robins.
Exactly. Well done. Well, come on, the Robins, indeed. Not the Robin Cooks.
No.
Oh, no, we can't say that because he's dead.
No, she's dead. But a long time ago.
Can you cut that out?
Just because she's chuckling, so you better cut it out.
It just remains for me to say that if you would like to have your question answered, please email reaction@dailymail.co.uk. You can leave us a comment on Spotify or even send us a voice note on WhatsApp. The number for that is 07796 657 512, and you can start your message with the word reaction. And we will be back, barring disasters, next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday, because this is an election special. We hope you found the election interesting. I, for one, am relieved it's over.
Oh gosh, honestly, I can't
Didn't
tell
it
you.
drag on?
I'm so happy it's over. I can't, couldn't be happier.
And next week we can talk about the new peerages, because there'll be lots of new peerages. But Starmer will be creating lots of Labour peerages.
Yes.
Sunak's created a few, which has arched some eyebrows.
Yes.
Can anybody
Where's
tell?
your peerage?
Not coming yet, but I don't want one yet. Maybe a knighthood.
I think you'd love a knighthood.
I don't think I would, actually.
Do you know not
Sir Andrew
dress
Pearce?
up? Sir Andrew Pearce? Well, I think that'd be rather good.
Would that mean people would have to bow and scrape? Does it mean I might get a restaurant reservation over somebody else?
You might, yes.
Probably wouldn't. Now, if you're listening, Prime Minister, I'm not going to get one now.
It's
Keir
too late.
Starmer.
Yeah, no, he doesn't like you.
I was never going to get one from Rishi Sunak. No, he doesn't like me very much, because I did tell him once he was very boring.
Well, okay, yeah. Yeah. If you would like to send us some questions, you can email us at reaction@mailonline.co.uk.
We're done. Okay. Well, I think that's us. I think we probably both need a bit of sleep.
Well, we've both got to go and write articles, haven't we?
We do. I'm going to be describing what it was like in the dying days in the bunker. The bunker being Tory Party HQ.
Okay, quickly, before we go. Sorry, I know we're supposed to go, but what actually happened? What was it like? Was it very sad?
Read the Daily Mail tomorrow.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. See you next week.